Thank you to Tech Open Air. We're thrilled to participate. Twilio launched in Germany earlier this year, so it's just exciting to be here. So I'm going to talk about two things on scaling, and I'll do a quick, brief introduction to Twilio if you don't know us. So Twilio, we have a global cloud communications platform that allows developers to easily embed voice, messaging, or video into their software application, and we charge on a pay-as-you-go basis. Some of our customers, we have thousands of customers, including Berlin's own Book of Tiger, where we power the SMS platform. And in terms of scale, I've been at Twilio for 3 years. Some numbers, we're adding about 1,000 developers to our platform per day. We have over 700,000. We had 90,000 when I joined the company. When I joined, our office was in San Francisco. We're now global. In terms of revenue size, we have over 100 million in annual recurring revenue. We crossed that threshold last year. It was about 10 million when I joined the company, and going from under 100 to actually we're approaching 500 employees. So a lot of growth very fast. So there's a scaling paradox which happened, and we'll jump into it. So get her built. So the activities that got you to where you're going in terms of scaling, rapid growth, your founding activities, those are going to kill you when you start to grow. So when you're in the early stage, if a customer needs something, you meet it. You meet that customer's need. Something's got to get done right away, you do it. You do something on the fly, you make that change. However, as you start to grow, that's not going to work. Again, working together, doing things yourself versus training people. The paradox is that the processes that you put in, guys like me that come on board start putting in, can suck the life out of your company and kill you. So, contract reviews, purchase orders, budgets, getting budgets approvals, having global offices, going back to headquarters to get things approved can cause problems. You got to do it, but what's important is having a foundation under that. And that foundation is values. And normally when you hear about values, it's Richard Branson talking about their wonderful values, or Tony Z from Zappos, how these great cultural values, and it's something that comes from a CEO. But from a CFO's perspective, it's really critical. These are the foundation, and I'll take great values over a process any day. At Twilio, we have 9 values. I won't get into it. I'll talk about a few, but they're actually real, and I want to cover a couple of them, how they've really helped out. First value is no shenanigans or no fooling around. When I joined our company, probably the 3rd week I joined, we had a billing issue. And Twilio, when your volume goes up, we automatically lower your prices. We also make mistakes and have made mistakes. And when I joined, we were not lowering it for some of our customers. And the engineering team was in the room figuring it out. We had no policy on what to do for billing. Do we give a credit? What do we communicate? But there was this value of no shenanigans, doing right for the customer. That is more important than the 5-page policy book on what to do in terms of billing. Something dear to my heart, be frugal as a CFO. We did our Series D financing. We raised $70 million. We were in a crammed office space, and we just opened up a giant loft area, not unlike this room, much larger to build out. And I don't know if you guys have seen a lot of corporate headquarters in San Francisco, Uber, Airbnb. I hope they're not here today, but people spend a lot of money, and I'm not sure it's overly thoughtful. And I was worried because wow, I'm going to need to do a budget and a plan and spend a lot of time with the team in terms that, they're going to take this money and run. When they came with the plan, we had the same old door desks we had in the prior our office. And that's something from Amazon as part of our culture, actually built by TaskRabbit, who I know is here today. And we build these desks for under $50 a desk, can build it to the right height. So that same frugal value came over to the new building. So again, even though I had a budget and a plan and a process, the fact that people were thinking that way was real critical. The last thing in terms of value I want to cover is in terms of thinking at scale. And this was lucky for me as a CFO to come in. So one of the core values of the company was, even though we're building for the current day, you want to think when you're 10 times, 100 times bigger. So having that scale as a value is real critical. So again, the processes, the controls, the procedures are real critical, but your foundation is having core values on top of it. And again, it's not the values of fun and partying and whatever. It's values that are going to drive your action. The second paradox is people think differently, and I've lived this with multiple CFOs as you expand in terms of CEOs, teams. And I want to cover a couple items. So you've got your typical founder CEO, and you've got your CFO. Certain characteristics of a CEO, right, will always push the limits, suspend disbelief to get something done. CFO, pragmatic. CEO will be very act immediately. Let's do it right away if something comes up. In the CFO, you'll be looking, hey, we have a plan, let's work it, let's stick with that plan. Another characteristic, do more. Hey, Twilio, we're really making a big push here in Germany. That's great, let's go do France, let's go do Spain. CFO might say, hey, let's focus on Germany for a while. Characteristics. Experiment, innovate. So innovation coming up in terms of doing things new. Your classic CEO, okay, let's do it differently. Whereas the CFO type, hey, you know what, this works fine. Let's do it the same old way. And then the last characteristic, and this isn't always true, a lot of gut feel and instinct, and your classic get more data. So these are very different characteristics as you're building up and scaling your team. And the key is embrace these differences. These differences, keep in mind, people don't do things just to piss you off. So when my boss comes in and says, hey, Lee, let's try this, let's do something new, and I say, hey, wait a minute, let's think about it, I'm not doing that to make him angry. It's the way I think. It's the way I operate. And as teams scale, when you do this, that can create a lot of conflict. And I've seen it. I've been on some executive teams in the high growth where we have just turned over marketing executives, engineering executives. People are different. So those characteristics of that early founding team is going to have to bring on people that think differently. And that's going to create conflict. And at its worst, it's going to create problems. At its best, it builds up an ecosystem. You can build a strong ecosystem. You do need people to work differently. When I showed that slide on those characteristics, there's no right, there's no wrong. You got to work together to get up. If you had the one side, you would never get off the ground. If you had the other one, you would drive the train off the track. So second big paradox, as you're scaling, be really confident is you need different thoughts. So wrap it up. Again, values, diverse thinking. I would take these any day over a set of procedures and process, and that's going to drive to growth. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to open up the floor to questions. There's a hand there.
Get them.
Like, when you're mentioning scaling, do you think that a lot of startups overthink the whole idea of scaling? Like, because I remember, for example, I think Paul Graham mentioned in one of his Y Combinator essays that, for example, like Airbnb, they went, initially when they were launching, they actually went door to door to people, and asked them if they have a room to rent or things like that. So do you think, just in terms of scaling, if you're a startup, I mean, a lot of startups, I think, overthink the idea of, scaling in the future rather than...
Yeah, great. I almost put that as my third paradox, right? So you have the paradox of what got you there differently. The third one is exactly that. So I know hiring early stage, right? Mark Andreessen was quoted earlier, you want to hire probably for the next year. It doesn't do you any good to get that person for several years out, but the paradox is, if you're actually successful, that might not be the right person. I look at it as, you're playing to win in this situation. Venture capitalists are giving you money, you're taking risks, you're playing big, you're playing to win. So I do think thinking large in the back of your mind as you're building items, and where that mix is, it's only on your gut, but you got to be thinking long and thinking in the future.
Great question. Any more questions? Okay, I've got a question then. Yeah. What's next for Twilio? Like, what's the next goal in 2016 or 2015?
Yeah, well, Twilio, and you saw that base. I mean, we are primarily based in the U.S., so very San Francisco company, very focused in the U.S. So international is critical for us. I mean, obviously, these are huge markets, big opportunity. So obviously, launching international, we're making a big push in Europe this year. We'll make a push in Asia next year. And then the second item is, our foundation has been off the traditional telephone system, voice and SMS. Earlier in the year, we just launched our video platform. And we see, over the time, right, we're all going to migrate from the traditional phone system to rolling over data. So we do see video and IP. We have a Twilio client offering. That's going to be a big, big, big for us in the future.
Cool. 2 hands at once, just here.
Can you talk more about the other values at the company relevant to growth and scale?
Yeah, well, one of the other values is draw the owl. And I don't know if, not a lot of people, if you have children, if you ever have the child's book, there's these books on how to draw an owl. It's like draw the circle, draw the body, draw the wings. Our value is draw the head, then draw the rest of the fucking owl. So it's just figure it out. And so I think that's one of the key values too, in terms of starting out, early on. And you have that with think at scale at the same time, so you get a nice balance. But having the value, having real values is critical.
Just in here.
Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering, how do you make those values actionable for fellow employees?
Boy, certainly and you know the answer to that question. In the U.S., there was a big company, Enron, that had big values sketched in granite, on their entryway. And obviously, this was a company that cheated the markets and cheated their customers. So it does start. It's the real deal. So it really starts from my boss, Jeff Lawson, who's a developer, founder, really supports and loves the development community. If they weren't real to him, then I wouldn't buy in and it wouldn't flow down. So it does start from the top.
Awesome. Okay, we've got time for one more question. I can see like a wavering hand over here.
We practice what we preach at Twilio. So Twilio is about composable APIs and the foundation. We think building is good because when you build things, it gives you flexibility to do it your own way. You get something off the shelf that can cause problems. So we do think in terms of building foundations so we can move and iterate quickly on top of that. We all know you put a big monolithic system in and you start growing 3 or 5 times, it's not going to work for before or not have flexibility. So we really do focus on putting in the composable piece and building on top of it.
Awesome. Great talk. Thanks for the questions. Great. And Lee Kirkpatrick.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, appreciate it.